Whether you're moving to Lethbridge from another city in Alberta, or even another province in Canada, or even abroad, there are a few things you should know. Being born and raised right here in Lethbridge, Alberta, and having lived here for the past 10 years in a row, I feel like I know the city pretty well. So in this video, we're gonna go over the pros and cons about living in Lethbridge. First, let's start with the pros. Lethbridge recently broke 100,000 people in population, and that means that Lethbridge is thriving and it's a growing city. But it's also small enough that we have that small town feel. It's honestly not unusual to go to the mall or a hockey game and run into at least 3 or 4 people that you know, and you're always gonna have somebody calling your name and wanting to say hi. So what I really appreciate about Lethbridge is how spread out the city is. Now, admittedly, in most cities, this is usually a bad thing when a city is too spread out because the commute can kill you sometimes and it can be super inconvenient. However, because Lethbridge isn't the biggest city, it's really nice to be able to have less density like you have in bigger cities like Calgary or even Vancouver. For example, did you know that Lethbridge is home to more park space per capita than anywhere else in Alberta? Which leads us to our next point. So actually, closer to the spring or the summer, I'm probably gonna come out with a follow-up video on this topic specifically because there is so much to talk about. But like I said, Lethbridge has more park space per capita than anywhere else in Alberta, and I really wanna drive that point home. Parks here in the Lethbridge area are absolutely gorgeous. You have parks like Henderson Lake that are mature, that have beautiful walking trails, a lake of course, an outdoor swimming pool, a golf course, and it's all centrally located. On the west side, you have beautiful parks like Nicholas Sharon with even more walking trails, more parks, and even a lake you can fish in. And don't forget about all the fruit trees that are around the area. My wife and I actually found out a couple years ago that the city has been planting fruit trees all around the city that you can take full advantage of. I'll link to a map to all the public fruit trees located down in the description below. And you can't talk about Lethbridge without first talking about the coulees. Well, what's a coulee? Well, it's basically like a big divide that separates the west side of Lethbridge from the north and the south side. Throughout the coulees, there are a ton of beautiful walking and bike trails, as well as the Old Man River that flows through it that you can float down in the summer, with caution of course. But there's also a beautiful nature preserve. During COVID, my wife and I used to walk down there almost every single day, and within a 30-minute to an hour walk, we could see tons of wildlife. And it wouldn't be unusual for us to see deer, muskrats, beavers, turtles, Canadian geese, and even sometimes coyotes, all in just one outing. Lethbridge is a very family-oriented community and there's a ton of stuff to do. We are home to a WHL hockey team called the Lethbridge Hurricanes. There's fantastic collegiate sports like the University of Lethbridge and the Lethbridge College. Also, we are welcoming Southern Alberta's first junior football team that should be starting this fall as well. Lethbridge is also home to Canada's second biggest YMCA that was built 3 years ago and is absolutely massive. It holds 3 skating rinks, a curling rink, 6 multi-purpose courts, a fitness center, lane swimming, pools, water slides, and so much more. So my wife and I are actually quote unquote influencers, and we've done a lot of work with the Canadian Badlands, Travel Alberta, and other tourism boards around the province. Working with these businesses over the last few years, we have seen a lot of Alberta. And let me tell you, there is a ton of stuff to do. With about an hour to an hour and a half drive anywhere around Lethbridge, you're gonna drive to some of the most unique and beautiful landscapes that you will ever see. South of us towards the border is Writing on Stone, which is Alberta's newest national historic site. It has some of the most unique hoodoes that you will ever see and is home to hieroglyphics that have been there for hundreds of years and is a sacred area to the Indigenous people. There's also a beautiful campground and a windy river to float down as well. Now, if you head an hour east of us, you're gonna be at the Castle Mountain Ski Hill, and you have mountains out there in the Crow's Nest Pass that are absolutely gorgeous, and in our opinion, is the next hidden gem of Alberta. Places like Banff and Canmore are great, but they're just so busy and so overpopulated that my wife and I are pretty sure that within the next 10 to 20 years, the Crow's Nest Pass is gonna be just as busy as those other places. So enjoy it while it lasts. Now, if you go north of us, you're gonna be in places like Drumheller or Dinosaur National Park, which has some of the highest concentration of dinosaur fossils in the entire world. And it has more crazy hoodoos that you're free to explore. And if you head just east of us here, you're gonna run into the Cypress Hills, which is another dark sky preserve and actually has the same elevation as in Banff. So you get a beautiful view of the stars and you'll see more than you'll ever see in your entire life. Now, I can't talk about tourist destinations without first talking about Waterton, which is just southwest of us and is honestly like a little tiny Swiss town nestled in the mountains with even more beautiful hiking. It's available with just a short 1.5 hour drive away. These are just a few of the places that I recommend to go see, and there's a ton more. So if you guys have any questions, be sure to reach out, or you can even follow my wife and I on our YouTube channel called Kurtis and Chelsea, which I will link to down in the description below as well. Okay, so I'm not gonna get into a ton of detail about the cost of living in Lethbridge because I did a full in-depth video on this topic specifically, and I'll link it right up here and down in the description as well if you wanna check that one out. But in short, Lethbridge is a very inexpensive city to live in. I would argue probably one of the cheapest cities to live in Alberta, especially when it comes to housing prices. Things like groceries and gas and restaurants are slightly cheaper here as well. But like I said, if you want to learn more about that, I'll leave a link to the video down below where there's a ton more information. So Lethbridge is unlike any other city in Alberta in that we don't heavily rely on the oil sector. In cities like Red Deer, even Medicine Hat, you can see a big boom and bust cycle within their economy that's all based on the price of oil. Whereas in Lethbridge, our economy seems to be fairly steady and you don't see those big highs and you definitely do not see these big lows. The biggest employer in Lethbridge is actually Alberta Health Services that's leading the way, with the second largest employer being the University of Lethbridge and the third largest employer being the Lethbridge School District 51. There's also a big agricultural and manufacturing sector here as well that keeps everything pretty steady. Currently, the average home price for a single family detached home in Lethbridge is $344,000. Now, this number changes weekly and usually hovers around that $335,000 to $355,000 mark. Now, this could be a shock to some of you if you're looking at places like Vancouver. You're going to be looking at upwards of $1 million for a single family detached home. Same thing in Ontario. However, if you're looking just north of us in places like Calgary, just a 2-hour drive away, the average single family detached home was upwards of $500,000. So you can save yourself a significant amount of money just by moving just 2 hours south down here in Lethbridge. Now, before I jump into the cons, I do want to talk about the weather because this is both a pro and a con in my opinion. So the pro about the weather here is that Lethbridge is home to a whopping 333 days of sunshine per year. If you like the sunshine, this is definitely the place to be. I've had a few people reach out to me that are moving here from BC, and that's what they're most excited about, is getting out of that gloomy BC weather and soaking up the incredible rays that are available right here in Lethbridge year round. Also, because Lethbridge is more south than the majority of Canada, we are also blessed with some of the mildest climates as well. Now, it doesn't happen often, but I've definitely seen years where we don't get any snow over the entire winter, and we're consistently 2 to 5 degrees warmer than Calgary at any given day. But like any city, the weather isn't always great, which is going to lead us to our first con. So if you've been researching Lethbridge, there is no doubt that you've probably seen that Lethbridge has been dubbed the Windy City. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Lethbridge isn't windy because it definitely can be. Be prepared that if you're moving here, there will be days, and probably multiple days throughout the year, where the wind is going to reach upwards of 100 to 110 kilometers per hour. That is extremely windy. However, it doesn't mean that it's windy here every single day. From what I've experienced, the wind is most vicious during the changing of the seasons. So in the fall, when the weather is blowing in the hotter air or the cold air, it's definitely going to be windy during those transitional periods. So yes, there are going to be some days where the wind's going to ruin some plans, but the way I look at it is if you're coming from somewhere like BC, there's a pretty good chance that the rain's going to ruin some of your plans on an equal scale. Also, because we do get crazy winds from time to time, we're also lucky enough to have what's called Chinook winds. So, well, what's a Chinook wind? Well, it's a wind that typically blows in from the west that brings warm weather in during those colder months. It can easily go from a -20 one day to a +10 day the next. It's literally happened this winter where we had a 40-degree weather change in just a couple of days, and that's all due to the Chinook winds. Now, my guess is that if you've been researching Lethbridge, you've probably found articles that say that Lethbridge has topped the crime severity index in Canada. And you're probably seeing a lot of headlines that's saying how unsafe it is here. And yes, since 2018, crime has definitely jumped pretty significantly. However, over the last 2 years, it's also dropped pretty significantly as well. So why such a jump in 2018 and 2019? Well, around this time, Lethbridge introduced its first safe consumption site. Prior to the opening of this safe consumption site, Lethbridge crime rate wasn't really out of hand. And just looking at a simple graph, you can see since the safe consumption site was implemented, crime did go up. So as of about a year to a year and a half ago now, this safe injection site has actually closed since, which since then we've also seen a decrease in crime. So I do want to say this in caution because I know that there are people out there that are in favor of a safe injection site, and there's also people that are not in favor to them. So that's all I really want to say about this issue, and I do not want to get political about it. But what I do want to reiterate is that Lethbridge is a very safe community. And I think if you interviewed some of the local residents here in 2022, they would all agree that crime rates are in the decline overall and that Lethbridge is a very safe community. I would imagine that most people probably feel more safe in Lethbridge than they do in other big cities around Calgary, like downtown Calgary or downtown Edmonton, for example. So Lethbridge does have a public transportation system, which includes city buses and a brand new downtown terminal. However, the city has done some work over the past year to update some of their systems that really hasn't gone over well with the public. I do have an aunt that works in the transportation department at the city, and I know that they are continually working on this to try to get this updated so that it's more convenient for the general public. But Lethbridge is not home to any sort of train system or anything like that. It's only city buses. I honestly don't have too much experience using the public transportation in Lethbridge, so I won't go into too much detail here. However, it is the norm in Lethbridge to pretty much drive everywhere on your own, and you are going to need your own vehicle. So like I said earlier in this video, Lethbridge is very spread out. So unless you have a vehicle to get around, it can be very challenging to get around this spread out city. Now, if you happen to live on the north or south side, my wife and I actually just moved to the north side last November. And if you live on this side of town, it's extremely convenient from what we've found, and you can get almost anywhere within 5 minutes. We've also noticed that the city has started to put up more bike lanes throughout the city, and me and my wife definitely want to start taking more advantage of those over the summer months because, like everywhere in Canada, gas is getting more expensive by the day. You'll notice that in Lethbridge, there's a big population that live on the west side that commute over to the north and south side, and honestly, if it wasn't for that big hill right in the middle, I honestly think more people would be open to using bikes around town. However, like I said, if you do live on the north or south, a bike can be a very good option for you. Now, I know I said earlier that Lethbridge being a small city was actually a benefit, but it can also be a bit of a negative. So what I mean by this is that because Lethbridge is significantly smaller than the next biggest city in Alberta, which is Calgary, we do lose out on a few amenities when you compare the two. Now, don't get me wrong, Lethbridge has absolutely everything you need and more, but if you're big into shopping or events, Calgary is definitely going to have more, and that's just a sheer numbers game. There's more people up there, so there's going to be more things to do. For the most part, I think lots of people from Lethbridge do take that short drive up to Calgary every so often to get those big shopping hauls in so they can hit their favorite stores in just a short day trip. My wife and I aren't really big shoppers that way, but we do head up to Calgary quite often to visit IKEA and for any of our favorite concerts that don't make its way down here. Now, Lethbridge does have an international airport, but it is extremely small. That being said, they have done some updates, and the city does promise us that they're going to keep expanding that airport. But for the most part, flights are going to be a short 30-minute flight from Lethbridge to Calgary, and you're going to connect to your further flight from there. I have seen some flights fly direct from Lethbridge to places like Abbotsford, or even in Mexico. I've actually flown once right from Lethbridge. However, for the majority of our trips, with me and my wife, we usually drive up to Calgary, park the vehicle there, and then fly using the Calgary International Airport. So the point of this video is actually to promote Lethbridge, but to still be honest about some of its downsides. So in conclusion, if you've already made the decision to move to Lethbridge, I am positive that you're going to be super happy with your experience here. And if you're on the fence, I really hope this video maybe tipped the scale towards coming to Lethbridge. Yes, you're definitely gonna have to deal with some windy days, but that comes with warmer weather. And yes, you're most likely gonna have to drive 2 hours to get to a pretty decent international airport. And yes, if you want some incredible shopping, you're probably gonna have to drive up to Calgary for that as well. However, what you're gonna love about living in Lethbridge is the incredible landscapes, the outdoor adventures that you can immerse yourself in, and we have some of the cheapest living in all of Canada, including housing. That alone can put a significant amount of money back in your pocket to do more things like travel internationally, or like seeing some of these beautiful landscapes right in your backyard, as well as living at a much slower pace than some of the bigger cities in Canada as well. For me, having a low cost of living easily makes up for that slight inconvenience, like not having the best or biggest shopping center or the biggest international airport. Let's be honest, every single city is going to have its own pros and cons, and for us in Lethbridge, the pros easily outweigh the cons. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. My name's Kurtis Hawkins. I'm a realtor with the Red Door YQL team located right here in Lethbridge. So if you are thinking about moving to Lethbridge and you're looking for that new home, I'll leave a link down in the description below where you can just type in your email and I'll send you all of the available listings. I'll also leave all my contact information down below so you can call, text, or email me anytime. If you guys liked this video and thought it was helpful, be sure to hit that like button. It truly helps me out and helps more people see this video and hopefully get to know a little bit more about Lethbridge. And if you want to see any more videos like this or any of my weekly home tours, be sure to hit that subscribe button and we'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.